Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bird Notice podcast. Billy here. Leading off, we got the Orioles claimed Jacob Webb off waivers from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Michael Givens gets DFA'd, and Nick Vespi returns. But Ryan, what episode number is this?
This is episode number 21. We have a pretty recent Oriole and one who played a little while ago. The first is Nick Markakis, who was the 7th overall pick in the 2003 draft out of Young Harris College in Georgia. And I have never heard of that place in my life. But Charlie Blackmon is another impact major leaguer to come out of Young Harris College. Markakis debuted in 2006 and finished sixth in Rookie of the Year voting. He went on to play over 1,300 games for the Orioles through 2014, after which he signed with Atlanta, where he played for 6 more seasons. In his Orioles career, he hit 141 homers with 658 RBIs and a 290 batting average. And later, with the Braves, he was an All-Star and a Silver Slugger winner in 2019. He won 3 Gold Gloves total in his career, 2 of those as an Oriole. Next up is Steve Stone, who played the final 3 seasons of his career with the O's from 1979 to 81. He won the 1980 Cy Young when he went 25-7 with a 3.23 ERA and 1.297 WHIP, 149 strikeouts and 101 walks over 250 innings. That season was also his only All-Star appearance. He was originally drafted by the Giants and played there, as well as 6 seasons in Chicago, which was equally split between the Cubs and the White Sox. Do you have another 21 that I didn't mention?
Yeah, to Steve Stone, real quick. He's one of my favorite announcers. I used to watch him on WGN. He's great. And he was also a recent guest on the last Ballparks podcast, and he talked about the Orioles a fair amount on there. It's worth a listen. I went into number 21 just assuming I was going to use Sammy Sosa, but then I found one I liked even better. I got former catcher Charles Johnson. He was drafted 10th overall in the 1989 draft by the Montreal Expos. He decides to go to the University of Miami, and then the Marlins drafted him 28th overall in 1992. He played for the Marlins, Dodgers, Orioles, White Sox, Rockies, and Devil Rays over a 12-year career from 94 to 2005. He was a 2-time All-Star in 97 and 2001. He won a World Series in 97 with the Marlins. He's one of only 3 catchers in Major League history to catch at least 100 games in a season without committing an error. He was involved in the trade that sent Hall of Famer Mike Piazza to the Marlins in 1998. That offseason, in a 3-team trade between the Mets, Dodgers, and Orioles on December 1st, 1998, he was sent to Baltimore for relief pitcher Armando Benitez. He went to New York, Johnson to Baltimore. He would play a season and a half with Baltimore. He was traded to the White Sox at the 2000 deadline along with Harold Baines for 3 minor leaguers you never heard of and catcher Brooke Fordyce. His son is currently a wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, where he made 6 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown last season.
I didn't know a lot of those things you just said, but especially the fact that his son's in the NFL. I had no idea.
Yeah, I was floored by that. Yeah, that's why I like that so much better than Sammy Sosa. Charles Johnson was a great player that you never even really thought of while he was playing. He was just an unassuming, quiet. Yeah, he had a really solid career.
Yeah, you mentioned he was an All-Star twice. I had it in my head that he had been an All-Star at least once. I think he was known more for his fielding than his hitting, but he was a very solid player. I remember him.
Yeah, I feel like he could have made more All-Star teams. That's kind of sucks. His son went into football. I wish more of these guys would go into baseball. Like Griffey's son went into football too.
Yeah, yeah, I immediately thought about that. Barry Larkin's son went into basketball.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that we're not thinking of, but the O's record since we last recorded is 2-3 right now, pending the outcome of this game we're watching in the bottom of the ninth against Seattle. Do we want to recap the week?
Yeah, so Monday was an off day. Nothing much happened.
So you don't want to talk about Kevin Brown?
Kevin Brown, I didn't hear anything about this. I've been watching Masson all week, listening to the Masson All Access podcast. I'm subscribed to the Masson YouTube channel. I follow Rock Kabako on Twitter. He hasn't mentioned this at all. Did you get some fake news?
I must have. I was thinking everybody was talking about this. Masson didn't say a word, huh?
Yeah, Masson was all quiet on this. I don't want to get too bogged down by this since it's been resolved and it happened over a week ago. Everybody from CNN to Larry the Cable Guy has weighed in on this, but we don't work for Masson, so we're allowed to share our thoughts on this. That being said, Masson, if you want to hire us, we're definitely available.
Do you want to give our listeners a very brief synopsis of what the situation was in case they are unaware?
Yeah, so there's a fine young broadcaster named Kevin Brown. He's worked for the Orioles since 2019. He was fed some stats and a graphic was provided and he read them. And the owner doesn't like anything being said negatively about his franchise, even though there was nothing negative about this. In actuality, what Kevin Brown said was positive, and John Angelos is a little man and took Kevin Brown off the air for a couple weeks.
And it's something a lot of fans noticed that Brown hadn't done a broadcast in a while, and there were people thinking maybe he took a vacation or maybe his contract calls for a certain amount of games to call in a season. So this is something I don't think the Orioles ever thought was going to get out and become public. And it did. And now the whole world knows that John Angelos is a pathetic baby.
Yeah, I noticed he was gone. I was surprised we didn't mention it, but like you said, broadcasters disappear from time to time during the season. There was really nothing to question, and it was weird how the story broke. It was just like a Twitter rando put it out there, and it was picked up by everybody eventually.
Yeah, I want to say Britt Garoli. I'm not sure if that's how you say her last name. I think she was the first like national reporter to corroborate what this podcaster had put out on Twitter, and that's when everybody started running with Hank.
Yeah, and she definitely has connections to the Orioles in terms of sources and whatnot. So she's extremely credible.
Yeah, just a bizarre situation all around, and especially with the way this season has gone for the O's, and they're legitimately one of the best teams in the league. They've been terrible last year they were decent, but this rebuild is finally coming to fruition, and they've been really good. And now you have this just completely unnecessary, ridiculous controversy that clouded their great season.
Yeah, this season had been going so well that I truly forgot what it was like to be an Orioles fan. And this week was a stark reminder of how gloomy it's been the last 5 to 6 years. Angelos made a lot of new enemies this week, especially in the media. And if there's one thing I learned, it's that there is no bottom with him. The stuff before this was clown level, but now we won't be surprised if we hear claims of like a hostile work environment or harassment or whatever else an unchecked billionaire can get away with.
Well, speaking of that, do we want to talk about the lease situation and the new information that came out this week about that as well?
I didn't plan on it just because I don't think that's really going anywhere, and we'll have enough time to get to that later.
Okay, that's fair. But as always, he's wanting more for not doing really anything himself.
Yeah. We got to put out one fire at a time.
Right. Just a real bummer all around. Kevin Brown did return to the booth on Friday, which the Orioles did say in a statement. Speaking of statements, Kevin Brown made his own that certainly did not seem to me like it was actually the way he felt or that he even may have written it at all.
No, that read like a hostage note, and I want to see the Kevin Brown director's cut. He would have thanked his colleagues in the industry for standing with him. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, and as other people have pointed out, if you're going to make somebody, if you're going to do something stupid and have an unjust suspension of somebody in your organization, it's probably best to not be the announcer because all of their peers are on the air for 2.5 hours every day for 6 months of the year. So they're going to make their feelings known about that.
I had the thought yesterday that with the dissolving of the regional sports networks and Major League Baseball maybe having to produce their own games in the future, the broadcasters might want to unionize to protect themselves from owners like Angelos trying to silence them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the logistics of that would work, but probably wouldn't be a bad idea after this happened. There's got to be some other instances like this in the past. Maybe not for the same exact reason, but an owner not liking what a broadcaster said for whatever reason.
I had seen some people upset that the story was being referred to as the Orioles doing this and not John Angelos being singled out. I agree that John Angelos is not the Orioles, but there is no John Angelos without the Orioles. They're inextricably linked. They have to wear whatever blood he spills on the brand.
Right. I mean, whether we like it or not, the Orioles are technically the owner's property. So what he does in terms of baseball or with the Orioles name is, that's the Orioles, unfortunately. Obviously, it has nothing to do with the players or the coaches or probably 95% of the staff there. But John Angelos is the owner of the Orioles and he represents them, whether that's good or bad. And oftentimes it's bad.
Yeah, on some level, John Angelos is probably jealous of Kevin Brown. Angelos is getting no credit for the team's turnaround, and I bet that bothers him. We started to give him some credit last week on our episode, and thankfully we backed off before we could fit our entire foot in our mouths by remembering he still hasn't signed a lease.
Yeah, he made us look really smart, huh? Right after we said something decent about him, he made a complete ass of himself again.
And I say Angelos might be jealous of Brown because Brown is the face of the franchise. Your lead announcer is more of a face to your hardcore fans in a way that a player can't be. Players come and go, announcers can stick around for decades. People are still upset about John Miller being fired.
I see what you're saying. I do think the face of the franchise is a player, though. Um, but I see what you're saying, how they outlast players. Think of guys like Harry Carey or Vin Scully, and those guys broadcasted for multiple decades. So I get your point.
Hopefully, we'll have Kevin Brown around for multiple decades. If I'm him, I might be throwing out some feelers this offseason.
Right. I mean, unless there's a city that you certainly don't want to be in, I can't see how almost any other job might not be preferable to him right now. After seeing what Angelos did and knowing that he can get suspended for reading what Masson puts on the screen, why would you want to stick around? The
And I don't
Orioles are
blame
not
him.
going to pay him a lot more than anyone else. We know that for sure.
Yeah, good point. And I don't blame him for going along with that hostage letter and walking out. His career is still in its infancy. There's only 30 of these jobs. There's no guarantee he can get another one. I'm sure he spent the previous decade before this job toiling in the minor leagues. That's nothing you want to go back to once you've tasted the good life.
And who knows if he might get blacklisted or something by other teams if he does that. I don't know how teams usually treat their broadcasters because you never hear about it because it's never an issue. But who knows? Maybe that would rub some teams the wrong way if he did actually say how he felt. So I agree with you. I totally get why he is trying to just move past it and do his job.
Yep. So that's all I really got on that. Do you got anything else?
No, I'm good. We want to get into the Astros then? The Astros were 64-49 when they arrived in Baltimore, 3 games back of Texas for the AL West lead. As we all know, the Astros are right up there with the Dodgers over the last several years, one of the premier teams in baseball, having won 2 World Series titles, including last season. Their offense before the series was 10th in runs per game, and their defense 8th in runs allowed. So pretty decent on both ends, but not amazing. On offense, they're led by Jordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker, as well as Chas McCormick, who's been having a really good year. And their starters are headlined, of course, by Justin Verlander, who returned to Houston at the deadline, as well as JP France and Framber Valdez, who was coming off a no hitter.
Yeah, the Astros are pretty scary. I had the note today that the Astros are scarier, but the Mariners are tougher. We'll get into the Mariners later in the week. This Tuesday game was blacked out on TBS, so I had to watch another game without Kevin Brown. the the broadcast that the Orioles were putting on though without Kevin Brown, not to get back into it too much, was hilarious. So it was like a parade in the booth at one point. They had 4 guys in there.
Yeah, they were just like looking for warm bodies, it seemed like.
Yeah, Tuesday was a 7-6 Houston victory. Framber Valdez versus Grayson Rodriguez. I'll never get used to the Astros in the American League. In a perfect world, Major League Baseball would have just moved the Brewers back to the American League.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but regardless, they're one of the better American League teams these days. And however, despite Valdez throwing a no hitter in his previous start, the O's jumped on him quickly. They got 2 in the first inning after Rutschman walked, and then Mountcastle hit an absolute bomb over the bullpens in left center.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear Jim Palmer have permission to say that Mountcastle had vertigo earlier this season.
Only positive things, right?
Right. But yeah, that was a 472-foot home run over both bullpens.
Yeah, that was. It's great to see Mountcastle. You know, we joked about how great he is against the Blue Jays, but the fact that he's continued to hit is really encouraging.
They showed a stat that the Orioles are 40-10 when scoring first, and the Astros are 47-16 when scoring first. So something had to give this series.
Yeah, well, we'll get into how the Orioles gave in this game, but they did end up getting 3 more again in the second after Arias hit a fly ball to right field that Tucker dropped. It was ruled a triple, but I think it should have been an error. What about you?
Definitely an error. They showed it go in and out of his glove.
Yeah, I think he thought he was like against the wall and jumped kind of for no reason, and that screwed up his eyes, I guess, and he missed it. But after that, McCann chopped one down the first baseline on a check swing that Valdez fielded, tried to throw home, but Arias beat it. It was 3-0. And then 2 batters later, Rutschman hit a 2-run homer, and the Orioles were up 5-0 after 2. So things were looking good.
Yeah, things were looking really good. And top of the third, Grayson walked 2 and allowed a single to load the bases. I'm on Grayson watch when he gets in trouble. Tucker hit a single. Diaz then hit a sac fly to get 2 back for Houston, 5-2 Orioles. Grayson was unfazed for the most part. He got out of it with limited damage and moved on.
Yeah, and then the Orioles got one of those runs back in the 4th inning after Westberg doubled. Arias moved him to third, and then a sac fly to score Westberg, and it was 6-2.
In the top of the 5th, this is one of my favorite plays of the season. The much maligned Jorge Mateo got the start in center field. He made a great catch. He had fun doing it too.
He did. He made a really nice play. When you say the Astros are scary, I just think of Alvarez and now Tucker after this series. Like every time Alvarez is up to the plate, I kind of think he's just going to blast one 500 feet.
Yeah, Tucker is pretty clutch too. There's no getting around him.
Right. So that was in the 5th inning. And after that, I don't have anything for the 6th, but Rodriguez got out of it cleanly, and that was the end of his night.
I do have a note in the 6th. Gunnar and Mountcastle made a great play. The runner was ruled safe. It was overturned on replay, and Hyde got tossed when he turned around to head back to the dugout. He just went ballistic after that. Then another single. Runners on the corners, 2 outs for Maldonado. Again, I'm on Grayson watch. I'm waiting for the meltdown. And on 3 pitches, Grayson got what might have been the biggest strikeout of his career, I think.
He was super pumped after that, too. It was fun to see him showing some emotion. Yeah, he certainly looked like a new pitcher since he came back up. So I guess we'll hope for more of that.
Top of the eighth, Bauman comes out for his second inning of relief. He allowed a leadoff walk. He was only at 14 pitches, but Freddie Gonzalez came out to bring Cano in. I'm only bringing this up because I wanted to see Bauman a little more, and Cano allowed the inherited runner to score, which he seems to do more often than not anymore.
Yeah, it's to the point where, as you said, I feel like Bauman should have been given a little bit longer leash because Cano has not been very good lately. He allowed Jeremy Pena to single, scoring Kyle Tucker, and that made it 6-3 after 8. Felix Bautista came on to get the save.
Yeah, John Singleton, who we saw earlier this year in Milwaukee, comes up to pinch hit. He drew a walk, which is why are we walking John Singleton? Altuve singles, Bregman strikes out. Alvarez then hit a long drive that a real center fielder probably could have caught, but it got by Mateo. Can't really blame Mateo here, but it's hard not to. You have to think Mullins would have made that catch. And then here comes Kyle Tucker. On the ninth pitch of his at bat, after 4 consecutive foul balls, he hits a no doubter grand slam to essentially end the night.
Yeah, that was all she wrote, basically. Bautista struck out Diaz after that. Crable got the final out. But Bautista's final line was 2/3 of an inning with 4 earned runs, 3 hits, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts on 30 pitches.
Yeah, for this one, I did my not 3 stars. I got number 3, the Camden Yard security. I don't know if it's true. This is hearsay, but there were reports of fans being removed for chanting "Free Kevin Brown" in the 7th inning. Number 2, I got Felix Bautista. In addition to what you said, he took the loss and a blown save. And number 1, Freddie Gonzalez for lifting Bauman early. I wonder what Brandon Hyde would have done. And he also left Mateo in center field in the 9th, which McKenna should have been out there. He probably wouldn't have made the catch either, but at least he's a real outfielder.
Yeah, I don't know. Mateo did make that nice catch earlier. I don't think that was what lost them the game. It was the fact that their 2 best relievers imploded in the 8th and the 9th inning. But yeah, that was a pretty demoralizing loss. I woke up the next morning and that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, damn, I can't believe the Orioles lost that game last night.
Yeah, that was a rough couple of days for Orioles fans with the Kevin Brown saga and this debilitating loss.
Right. I blame Angelos for that.
Yeah, he definitely took the air out of the balloon, at least for a couple of days.
Yeah, completely. Well, the air was still out of the balloon on Wednesday because this was an 8-2 loss, and Jack Flaherty did not do nearly as well in his second start as an Oriole as he did in the first.
Yeah, Kyle Tucker picked up right where he left off the night before with a 2-run homer. That pretty much set the tone for this game.
Yeah, this series was, I think, all 3 games, one of the teams scored in the first inning. And this was the Astros' turn, but they would go on to win the game, obviously.
Yeah, more trouble for Flaherty in the top of the second. Altuve with an RBI single with 2 outs to make it 3-0 Astros. Flaherty then walked Bregman to load the bases for Yordan Alvarez, and he grounded out to Gunnar to the end of the inning, but this thing could have been ugly.
Yeah, and despite the rough start from Flaherty, the O's did get within a run in the 4th inning after Mountcastle singled and then Hayes homered to right field, making it a 3-2 ball game.
Yeah, that single extended Mountcastle's hitting streak to 11 games.
Yeah, he's still doing it. And you mentioned Jacob Webb off the top of the show. He looked good.
Yeah, I saw a stat on him somewhere. I don't know where. But Jacob Webb, in his Orioles debut, he struck out the side, and he was the first Oriole since Al Reyes in 1999 to strike out the side in their Orioles debut.
Interesting. I assume that means if a pitcher was the starter, it would be the first inning of their Orioles debut, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would just assume any inning of the game. if he wasn't the
You think so?
starter.
You don't think any starter who's made their first start with the O's since '99 has had an inning with a striking out the side? I feel like it's got to
No,
be just the first inning they pitched for the Orioles.
yeah, but this is Orioles starting pitching we're talking about. This isn't like
That is a good point.
yeah, the last 20 years of Orioles starting pitching. It's I don't doubt that they couldn't do that.
Right. So yeah, Webb looked good in the sixth, but then the Astros put it out of reach in the eighth when Fujinami came in, and he just gives me hardcore anxiety now every time he comes into a close game.
Yeah, I still want to see more, but it's hard for me to say he's not anxiety inducing. He's pretty hardcore out there.
I need to look at the numbers, but it seems like every pitch has a 50-50 shot of being a strike.
Or hitting someone in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so in this game he came in. Austin Hayes made a nice grab on a deep fly by Chas McCormick, and then Jose Abreu flew out. So there were 2 outs with the bases empty, and I'm thinking, oh, cool, decent inning for Fujinami, and then he did his thing.
Yeah, that Austin Hayes catch is going to show up on the end of the season highlight reel. That was a great catch.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm devaluing it in my mind because his catch against Toronto was just so ridiculous that I was like, he's done better before. But it was a
And
nice
that catch,
grab.
yeah, that catch in Seattle or Toronto sealed a win, and this one was a loss.
Right. So after that happened, things are looking good for Fujinami. He then walked consecutively Pena, Dubon, and Maldonado, all on full counts to load the bases. So after that, Bauman came in and gave up consecutive 2-run singles to Altuve and Bregman before Alvarez mercifully flew out to end the inning with a 7-2 Astros lead. So the
Yeah,
O's went from 2 outs with no one on base to allowing 4 runs in that inning.
yeah, things totally fell apart for Bauman. You never know what you're going to get with him either. He's not as wild or as exciting as Fujinami, but the results may vary.
Yeah, I mean their whole bullpen, even Bautista this week had that implosion. Like their whole bullpen has been kind of hit or miss lately, and it's very concerning considering the stretch run and the playoffs are coming.
And it's official we won't be getting any help from Michael Givens for the bullpen as he was DFA'd today. He may never pitch in the major leagues again, I think.
No, it seems like he's at that point in his career where that injury is going to be the death knell of his major league career.
Anything else? The bottom of the eighth, there was a single and 2 walks to load the bases with 1 out for Hayes. He flew out to shallow right field. Westberg then chopped right back to the pitcher for the 3rd out. Kauser and Westberg, who are combined 0 for 7 with 2 strikeouts in this game.
Yeah, they weren't good, but really nobody else was. And the Astros ended up getting another in the ninth, and that made it 8-2. So this was, one game to start the series that the O's should have won, and a second one where they just kind of got pounded. So not a good start after the whole Angelos debacle.
Right. Yeah, so Orioles were going into Thursday, August 10th, trying to keep their sweep streak alive. The Orioles had 6 straight. Dean Kramer got the start. The Orioles had won 6 straight of Dean starts.
And they did manage to make it 7. They took this game 5-4 and continued that streak of not being swept. As I mentioned, somebody scored in the first inning in every game, and this time it was the O's. Got out to a quick lead when Agley hit a leadoff home run into the splash zone.
And the Astros answered right back in the top of the second with their own solo home run to tie it up at 1.
I thought it was neat that Agley hit it right into the splash zone, but from the left side of the plate.
That was the ball that the guy caught too, right?
The guy caught it in the front row, like 3 people over from the Mr. Splash.
Yeah, they were looking at it to make sure it wasn't fan interference.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy was so psyched. Looked like he was having the time of his life.
Yeah. The top of the 3rd, Altuve doubled. Alvarez walked. So there's runners on the corners with 2 out for Kyle Tucker again. Dean would get him to fly out to Hayes in center field.
And then in the bottom of the third, the O's took the lead again after an Arias triple and a McCann single to score him, making it 2-1. Now, one stat I have here is that we talked about that ball that Tucker should have caught that was ruled a triple. That gave Arias triples in consecutive starts on Tuesday and Thursday. Those are his only triples of the season, and he has just one other triple in his career. So that was just kind of a weird thing to have two in a row for him, a guy who triples aren't that common to begin with, but let alone him who's not especially fast.
Yeah, and his power is way down this year. He's still only at 4 home runs after, I believe, 17 last season.
And then after McCann got on base, he was thrown out by a mile trying to steal second with a 3-2 count on Agley and no outs. Of course, Agley struck out, and now there were 2 outs with nobody on base. I just don't understand that thinking with McCann. I get trying to move him over to second, but not McCann.
Yeah, you're just happy he's on base. You don't need to force anything with him.
Right. So on the defensive side, Frazier made a nice diving play on an Alvarez grounder to end the 5th with runners on first and third.
Yeah, so he was first pitch swinging, and he lined one to Adam Frazier, who made a web gem to save a run and end the inning. According to Melanie, the ball was 115 miles per hour off the bat, and Frazier only had 2.2 seconds to make the play.
115, you don't often see balls get up that high on the exit velo.
Yeah, you didn't even really get to see the play at first because the ball came so fast off the bat that the camera couldn't keep up with it. And then next thing you know, you look over and Frazier's on the ground, and you're like, did he catch that?
It's wild. We talk about, I think earlier this year, we were talking about trades and how they can backfire trading prospects. We mentioned Tatis getting traded from the White Sox to the Padres when he was young. But Alvarez was a Dodgers signing, and he was traded to Houston. So he's another guy who's like, wow, imagine what the Dodgers would have if they had Yordan Alvarez too.
Yeah, the Dodgers are so good at developing prospects, and then they seem to just want to trade them away.
I guess that's what you do when you actually spend money to pay stars. You need to acquire them somehow.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, back to this game. The next run was in the bottom of the 6th when McCann doubled. He was originally called out and it was overturned after a challenge. And then Agley drove him in with a single, so it was 3-1 Orioles.
Yeah, Adley was first pitch swinging on this one again. I love that. He lined one back up the middle, make it 3-1.
And then the Astros got another back in the 7th when Jose Altuve hit a solo homer off Kramer. As we've mentioned before, Kramer does have those issues giving up homers. That was his second home run allowed of the game, but that was also only the second run that he would give up.
Yeah, Hayes made a great effort on this catch. Thankfully, he wasn't injured.
And for the Astros on their side, they had Hunter Brown going. He's relatively young. He ended up lasting 6 innings with 5 earned runs, 8 hits, no walks, and 7 strikeouts. So Kramer was certainly better than him in this one, and that helped because the bullpen was pretty rough again.
Bottom of the 7th, O'Hearn had a leadoff double, the 4th leadoff extra base hit of the game for the Orioles. Hunter Brown threw one up and into Mountcastle, and the next pitch, Mountcastle blasted it out to make it 5-2, extending his on-base streak to 17 games.
Yeah, has he come up in every game we've talked about so far? I mean, he was great.
Yeah, he was all over last episode, too.
Then we get to Cianel Perez starting the 8th inning after Kramer came out. He got 2 outs, but then allowed a Tucker single and had an error covering first base. So there were runners on first and second when Cano came into the game.
Yeah, Dubon blooped one into right for the RBI. Cano would then strike out Jeremy Pena to end the inning, but another inherited runner allowed to score by Cano.
So at this point, it's 5-3. Bautista comes on again for the 9th. He got a leadoff pop out. then allowed a double to Altuve, threw a wild pitch that allowed him to get to third, and then walked Bregman. So right now we're at first and third with one out in the ninth.
Yeah, and all you wanted here was a nice, easy Felix inning after the week that the Orioles had been through.
Right, you're telling me.
Yeah, so you got runners on the corners with one out for Yordan Alvarez. He would pop up, but McCann would make it way more interesting than it should have been. And Kyle Tucker is up again. You can't escape him. He's up in the hero spot versus Bautista, 2 on, 2 out. He would walk to load the bases for Diaz, who already homered in the second inning. He lined one to Urias at third. He can't make the catch, but he knocks the ball down, which saved a run. So it's 5-4 Orioles with the bases loaded for John Singleton. He popped up to Henderson, extending the sweetless streak to 76. It's going back 15 months. It's the fifth longest streak in history, the longest since the Cardinals from 1942 to 1944.
Yeah, I think despite the fact that they almost blew the game, that play by Arias was huge. As you mentioned, he knocked that ball down. I think that would have definitely tied it if he had not done so. So it was a really impressive play just getting his glove on that ball. I mean, it was pretty much a full out dive, and while he did technically allow an infield single, that kept him to just one run on that play.
Yeah, you got to knock it down. My 3 stars for this were Mountcastle with the 2-run homer, Adley 2 for 4, 1 home run, 2 RBI. He had 1 strikeout, got caught stealing to end an inning. And the number 1 star, Dean Kramer, 7 innings pitched, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts. He did allow 2 home runs, though. The Orioles left no one on base in this game, while the Astros stranded 11.
That sounds like a one-run difference to me, if not more.
Yeah. So now we're on to the Mariners series.
Yeah, so the O's took off for a West Coast trip that began in Seattle. The Mariners had a 62-52 record entering the series, 5.5 games back of Texas in the AL West. I'm not sure, I didn't write it down, but I think they had won like 7 in a row coming into this series. So they were on a hot streak. Their offense is just about average, but they were 5th in the league in runs against. Don't have any OPS over 800 amongst qualified hitters, but their most dangerous have generally been Jarrett Kelenic, who was injured, Cal Raleigh, and Julio Rodriguez, the defending Rookie of the Year. They've got some really solid starters. We saw 2 of them this series with Luis Castillo and George Kirby, who both kind of dominated the O's. And their bullpen with the second best ERA in baseball behind only the Yankees. So the Mariners minus Paul Sewald took it to the O's in the first game and won 9-2. This was just rough for the O's all around on Friday.
Yeah, it's tough enough to try and stay up and watch these games. I didn't make it through this one, thankfully. The Mariners wore their City Connects. I noticed they have a PNW patch on their sleeve for Pacific Northwest. That should be on the front of the jersey instead of it just saying Seattle. They have enough jerseys that say Seattle.
Yeah, I think we talked about these jerseys a while back. I just can't stand the dark pants with the blue jersey. It just, gross. But they killed the O's in them, so at least they won their game like the O's usually don't in theirs.
Yeah, we don't have much on this one. Cedric returned and made a nice catch. Kevin Brown tweeted out his hostage note before the game. I noticed if you take away the first, fourth, fifth, and sixth innings, the Orioles go into the bottom of the ninth leading 1-0.
Oh, cool. I wish we could do that. Take away the innings where the O's sucked, and then they win all the time.
Yeah. I do have a star of the game. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to mention that the first 3 batters of the game for the Mariners all just hit missiles off Gibson, and you could kind of tell that things were not going to go well. And I think they all hit 109 mile per hour balls. And Gibson ended up going 5 1/3, allowing 9 earned runs, 12 hits, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts. So Gibson, as we know, is much better than he was the other night, but it was just a bad outing.
Yeah, and they left Gibson out to dry to eat up some innings instead of burning the bullpen for the next 2 games.
Yeah, and then on the other side, Luis Castillo was good. 6 innings, 1 earned, 2 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. He's a good player, and he pitched like one.
Yeah, my start of the game for this is Nolan Ryan's grandson. 28-year-old Ryder Ryan made his major league debut, striking out 2 and walking 1.
Huh. I probably was not listening at that point because I did not know that that was his grandson.
It's not his grandson. I just assigned that
Oh.
to him since
Okay, I was like, I must have missed that somehow. I'm looking at him. It says he's from North Carolina. Like, I feel like Nolan Ryan's grandson got to be a Texan, right?
right. Yeah, they wouldn't let him in the family if he weren't a Texan.
Right. Yeah, that's this game sucked for the O's. They had a total of 4 hits. Nobody had more than 1. It was just bad.
Yeah, so we might as well move on to Saturday.
Let's do it. I did not watch this game until the very, very end. So if you want to take the reins on this one, go for it.
Yeah, you didn't miss it too much. It was a great game. I watched it on Fox Sports 1. That gave it like a playoff vibe. The whole game, George Kirby was great, but Cole Irvin versus George Kirby. Cole Irvin came into this with a 0-6 record, an 8.42 ERA career versus Seattle. Most of that was when he was with Oakland. Well, all of it. Yeah, just fast forward to the 9th inning here. A missed opportunity. Westberg had a leadoff single. He stole second base on a Gunnar pinch hit strikeout. He would go to third on a Adley Rutschman ground out. Now we have the returning Cedric Mullins up, which you love seeing him up in big situations, but he would just pop up to the pitcher.
Do we want to mention George Kirby's line at this point after 9 innings? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't write down much on George Kirby, but we could talk about him a lot. He was great.
So Kirby pitched 9 innings, allowed 3 hits, no runs, no walks, 7 strikeouts on 103 pitches. I mean, he completely shut them down, and it was kind of ironic that they were honoring Felix Hernandez because that's kind of thing seemed to happen to him quite often back in his heyday, where he would pitch great and then the team wouldn't give him a lot of run support.
I saw this from OptaStats. George Kirby was so good in this game that the Orioles became the first team to win a game since August 28th, 1913, in a game started by Walter Johnson, that the opposing team pitched 10 plus innings while allowing fewer than 5 hits, no earned runs, no walks, and 0 extra base hits.
First time since Walter Johnson. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Was he the big train?
Something like that. They've got that hideous statue of him at the Nationals Park where it's like supposed to be him throwing a ball, but they have like 8 arms on it to try to show the motion, and I just think it looks terrible.
I would love to see an 8-armed pitcher. That would be fun.
Do you remember was it Alfonseca they called El Pulpo? I think that was his nickname for the octopus because he had like 6 fingers.
Yeah, the former Marlins relief pitcher.
Yeah, I think that was him. I think I'm using the right nickname. I'm not up on my Spanish, but yeah, I just pulled up this statue again. It just is so ridiculous looking. You have to see it if you have it.
Yeah, I'll give it a Google. So we head to the bottom of 9th. Bautista's in now. He allowed a 2-out single. The inning would end on a caught stealing where the runner was ruled safe, but replays showed that Marlowe came off the base while Gunnar held onto the tag. Big league play by Gunnar. A veteran move.
Yeah, he certainly has been playing like a veteran lately, and that brought us to the not new anymore, but the modern extra inning rules where the runner starts on second, and that was Cedric Mullins in the top of the 10th.
Yeah, you can't pick a better ghost runner than him.
Yeah, I guess Mateo maybe, but that's about it on the O's roster.
Right. Mullins would promptly steal third base. Santander grounded out. Mountcastle would single, and Mullins would score to end the scoreless gridlock, 1-0 Orioles. And that would be the deciding run.
And who else but Ryan Mountcastle, who we've brought up so much this episode because he's just been so good lately. After that, O'Hearn hit a grounder to short, and Hayes hit a pop out, and then Frazier struck out. So kind of a harmless inning after that, but the O's had the 1-0 lead, and Bautista came back out for the 2-inning appearance.
Yeah, you weren't kidding about the statue. That is atrocious.
Isn't it?
Like somebody should be fired for that.
There have been worse statues like that Cristiano Ronaldo one comes to mind. They had a statue at Syracuse. It's still there, but the original version, it was of Ernie Davis, and they put Nike swooshes on his cleats, and he played in like the late 50s. They're like, Nike wasn't a thing back then. You gotta fix this.
We were on a trip somewhere, and Suffolk is a city that's like, I don't know, 30 minutes from here. And on the way back, we were going to be driving through Suffolk, and I found out there was a Mr. Peanut statue there because planners had something to do with Suffolk. And I was like, hey, we're
Okay.
going to stop in Suffolk and see this Mr. Peanut statue. And my wife was like, why? And I was like, get in the car. We're going to see Mr. Peanut. And we pull up in the middle of town and we're like, where is this thing? I'm expecting like an Abraham Lincoln size Mr. Peanut. This thing is like 3 feet tall. It was so disappointing. You could
Just
see
like
it
on a
from
street corner or something.
exactly. Yeah, we didn't even have to get out the car. Like we were looking around, we looked over, and there was this tiny Mr. Peanut that could have never lived up to the hype.
Well, at least you can say you saw it, and you know now that you don't need to go back.
Yeah, I hear about it all the time. I caused like an extra 2 hours on our trip.
You
We
live
didn't
and
even get out
learn.
of the car and take pictures or anything. It was just like, let's go.
Nowadays, you can just look at reviews online, and you'd see all the 1-star reviews of people being like, "It's 3 feet tall. It's outside a drugstore. Don't waste your time."
Yeah, that would have been a good heads up to have. The 3 stars in this one, I gave number one to Cole Irvin. 5 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 67 pitches, 52 strikes. I had some questions of why they pulled him early, but then it was pointed out that, he'd been in the bullpen for a good while now, and I guess the Orioles had him on a 70 pitch count, and he also had 15 of 18 first pitch strikes, which is great.
Yeah, I think it was Ryan Ripken I saw on Twitter mentioned that since Irvin was technically in the bullpen for a while, even though he started, this game basically was 10 innings of no-run baseball by the bullpen. Like, as we said earlier, they've been kind of shaky lately, but they were great in this one.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love this game. I love games like this. This game it cruised. Mountcastle 2 for 4. He had the game-winning RBI. I gave the 3rd star to Felix. He was big. 2 innings pitched, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts, 28 pitches, 6 for 6 first pitch strikes. Seattle was 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position in this game. Kirby had no hit stuff though. We went over his numbers earlier. Oh, and the 4-star I gave to Felix Hernandez. Hats off to a great career. I was excited when the Orioles signed him, even though it went nowhere. He couldn't make it out of spring training, but the Mariners welcomed him into their Hall of Fame on this night.
I actually forgot that they signed him because he never really did anything. Did he ever pitch for them, or was it just spring training?
It was just spring training, but I couldn't even tell you if he made a spring training start or not.
Yeah, well, and then of course you have those whiny Seattle talking heads who complain that somebody called Felix Bautista King Felix on like social media. They're getting all up in arms over that.
That is like Buster Olney number 35 level annoying, but at the same time, with the week the Orioles have had, I would love to have that stupid controversy be our number one distraction right now.
Right. It's like, change the narrative. Keep saying that. We'd
Yeah,
rather talk about that.
Angelos is probably paying the Seattle Mariners broadcasters to keep crying about this to try and deflect the negative attention from the lease and the Brown debacle.
At this point, I wouldn't put it past him.
So we're on to Sunday now. Top of the third, McCann reached on an error. He slid into first base with his feet again, and he keeps doing that. Adley would single. Gunnar would plate McCann with a sacrifice fly, make it 1-0 Orioles. the broadcast said it was Henderson's second sacrifice fly of the year. I would think he would have more. Bottom of the third with 2 outs and a runner on second, Bradish called a timeout. He had something in his eye, and they had to come out and put drops in his eyes. It didn't work though because the next batter tied the game up with a base hit to make it 1-1. Bottom of the fifth, Julio doubled in a run to make it 2-1 Mariners. The Orioles would pick that up with 2 singles, one by Hayes and one by Mountcastle. Mountcastle scored the run, 2-2 tie. And now we get to
There's
the ninth
Mountcastle
inning.
again.
Yeah, ninth inning. This is where we were prepping for the record. A lot happened here.
A lot happened here. So we were kind of chatting and watching this at the same time, but in the ninth inning, the O's were able to get on base when, hold on, I'm pulling it up. Westberg hit a ground rule double on a deep fly to left center and was promptly pinch ran for with Jorge Mateo.
Yeah, this is why Mateo's not going anywhere at this point. I said I thought he could have claimed waivers, but that was a month ago. If you try and waive him now, someone's going to pick him up just for the pinch running in the postseason. You would see guys, especially back in the day before the trade deadline was the last day for trades, and then you had the August waiver trade period. You would always see pinch running guys go in that month period, but those trades aren't allowed anymore. Yeah, but Mateo's here for the rest of the season, and this is why.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, he would score on a close play at the plate.
Yeah, and let's not forget before that there was a big play. McCann walked in between, and then there was a balk called on, I don't even remember who the pitcher was, but was it Munoz?
It was Munoz, yeah.
So there were now runners on second and third, and that's when Mateo was able to score.
Yeah, so then we're thinking, okay, cool. The Orioles are going to pitch the bottom of the inning and get out of this thing. Cedric Mellons made a catch I can't believe I saw.
Yeah, that was outstanding. Just to backtrack a little bit, I want to give credit to Mateo for taking off on a kind of a chopper that Agley hit that stayed in the infield, and he made a great slide that was held up after being challenged, and the O's were up 3-2. Now, as you mentioned, that play that Mullins made was after that Hayes catch. Maybe it's just recency bias, but I'd say that Hayes catch against the Blue Jays and then this one are probably the 2 best ones of the year for the O's.
Yeah, I'm all discombobulated here because I couldn't take notes while we were prepping. But yeah, that Mullins catch, that's number 1 to me. Hayes number 2, and then Mullins on Buxton in Minnesota. That's my number 3 catch of the year so far.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. Now, what was kind of ironic about this play was Mullins made an amazing grab to get the second out, but then right after that, Dominic Canzoni hit an absolute bomb to right field off of Bauman and tied the game anyways.
Yeah, the only thing that stopped that ball was the ballpark.
I'd never heard of this guy, but he looked like a Babe Ruth up there, and that was just a monster shot, and he knew it immediately.
Yeah, Bauman was the culprit here. Vespi would come in and get out of the inning.
Now, without knowing anything about Canzoni, I'm gonna guess he's a lefty batter and not a switch hitter. In hindsight, maybe you bring in Vespi to face him, but they didn't, and Bauman grooved, and I think it was a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, basically right down the middle, and he just crushed it.
Yeah, they go out of their way. They've been doing it for 2 years now to not give Vespi the opportunity he's earned with his performance in Norfolk.
Well, luckily for Brandon Hyde, that all wouldn't matter because the O's were able to take the lead in the 10th.
Yeah, was that on the Mullins home run?
Yeah, so again, we have the runner starting on second. That was Gunnar Henderson. Santander grounded out to the right side, moving Henderson to third. Right before Mullins' home run, he hit a home run that was foul by like a foot. and that one went further than the one he hit that actually counted a couple pitches later.
I'm so glad he's back. He adds real credibility to this team and lineup. Um, Another injury might shut him down for the season if it's in the same groin abductor region or whatever. So he's got to be here if they're going to win anything.
Yeah, he's a very good player, which we all know, but I agree. It's just about, he's to the point where if I see him like running hard on a ball, I'm like worried that he's going to pull something and miss 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's not going to go away. I think that's with us for the rest of this season.
Right. So the O's had that 5-3 lead and didn't get any more. So the bottom of the 10th, we had our favorite anxiety-inducing reliever Shintaro Fujinami come on.
Yeah, it looks like there was a base hit and a wild pitch here. So of course he made things interesting.
Yeah, he struck out the first batter on a full count, just blew a fastball by him about 100 miles an hour. There was then a wild pitch that broke something behind the plate. It like hit some padding that fell off the wall. That's it was not even close to the catcher on that pitch. So that moved the ghost runner over to third, and he then got a fly out and a ground out to end the game. So thankfully, Fujinami was able to come through and preserve this victory and the O's series victory, which after that first game, I didn't expect that. They looked bad. And I think it was all about yesterday winning that game.
Yeah, the Mariners are tough. Uh, they've been able to turn their season around. They were kind of scuffling up until this last month or so. Fujinami, is that his first career save?
It's his first of the season, so yeah. Or maybe it's just the first for the O's, but I think it's probably the first of the year, according to the stats here on MLB.com.
What do you think the Orioles should do with their eighth inning now that Cano is proven to be untrustworthy and Fujinami hasn't earned any trust either?
I don't know. I mean, Coulom's out right now. I like
Yep.
him, especially when there's lefties, but I mean, right now it's just like a flip a coin whether you're going to get a good or a bad performance out of somebody. So I don't know. I don't think I have a certain guy in mind. What about you?
I have a theory on Coulomb. I'll get to in a minute. I was wondering if you just throw Jacob Webb to the Wolves this week and see what he can do.
You could. I mean, after these last two games, the bullpen's got to be pretty worn out. So they're just going to be looking for innings wherever they can find them, I think.
What a move to get him in the on the waiver wire after the trade deadline. And I obviously didn't see him pitch with the Angels. His numbers look fine. It's amazing he fell all the way to the Orioles on the waiver wire list. That means he was like one or two teams away from going unclaimed.
Yeah, I remember looking at his numbers when they picked him up, and he didn't seem spectacular, but also knowing that the Angels aren't that great was kind of surprising that they let him go.
Yeah, who are they to be letting guys go?
I don't know, but ever since coming over to Baltimore, he hasn't allowed a run, and he's pitched 3 innings, so it's about as good as you can ask for. No hits either.
And Tyler Wells made a rehab start against the Richmond Flying Squirrels, I believe yesterday. I'm trying to find his numbers.
I wonder about him. I feel like for him it's just an innings thing, and I don't think as the year goes on, you're not going to get less innings. Like it's only going to add up more and more. So I'm not really sure what the plan is with him.
Yeah, and the way he melted down, like guys don't come back from that sometimes within the same season even.
Yeah, he's the type of guy where if your season's over, you just kind of shut him down and send him to a low level minor league or something and just be like, hey, you did a good job. We know you've reached your limit at this point. Just make sure you're healthy for the off season and get ready for spring training.
Yeah, he went three and a third, allowing 3 hits and 1 run against Richmond. I believe one of the hits was a home run.
Who knows? Maybe when the rosters expand, he'll come up into a bullpen role or something.
I keep forgetting about the rosters expanding.
I believe John Means pitched for Bowie this week as well.
Yeah, yeah, things are going to get interesting. And with back to Kulo, my theory is so they just shut down CNL Perez a couple weeks ago for 2 weeks with this injury, and now with Coulomb, I wonder if they're just doing that to give them a break.
You think they're making things up?
I wouldn't doubt it because those guys were, heavily used all season, and
I
the
do wonder
Orioles,
about that.
yeah,
Like, like who? How often would Major League Baseball ever check on a player's actual injury that's reported? Like, are they looking for doctors' medical reports or something to show that this guy's actually injured in the way that you say he is? Probably not, right?
especially when you see what the NHL can get away with when they're just stashing guys on the long-term injured reserve list to hide salary, and then they magically appear in the playoffs when there's no rule against being over the cap in the postseason.
Well, yeah, but don't forget that the NHL is the most clown run organization outside of the NCAA, probably. So don't hold them up as a standard for anything.
Yeah, yeah, the NCAA. Wow, I hope they go away someday.
They might be on track with all this realignment. And the only thing I have is next up, the O's head to San Diego and then to Oakland. I will be heading to San Diego for that series as well. So that'll be fun. I haven't seen the O's play in person this year since April, in the very beginning of the season when they came to Texas. That was a game where Bradish, I think, started and got hit in the leg. And then Wells came in after that and
Yeah,
threw like a one hit game after that for I don't know how many innings. So it was a long time ago.
yeah, a lot has happened since then.
Right. So I'm recording from my Airbnb in Phoenix. I went to the Diamondbacks game last night against the Padres. It was a pretty good time. They had their 25th anniversary celebration. They had a bunch of alumni on the field before the game. It was kind of a funny combination of guys who were really good and others who you're like, huh? I don't, if as somebody who doesn't follow the Diamondbacks that closely, and be some of the guys I was like, I didn't think that dude was any good. But then they saved Randy Johnson and Luis Gonzalez for the end, so that was fun.
Yeah, they were the two headliners, weren't they, of the event?
Yeah, they had Kurt Schilling there too, but he was just one of the guys on the field, which which was kind of funny to me because Schilling and Johnson, I believe, were co MVPs of that World Series victory, and one of them was clearly held up as a legend, while the other was just like a past player. So I have a guess as to why that was, but it was kind of interesting to see it play out like that.
Knowing him, he probably showed up uninvited.
I believe at one point I looked up at the TV screen in the stadium and he was in the booth with Bob Brenly and Steve Berthume. So I don't know about that, but I'm not sure what he said, but I think that was him on the screen I saw.
I used
So
to love watching that dude pitch. He is a Hall of Famer to me. I just hope he doesn't get in while he's alive.
no, I think he is too, especially his postseason record is really great. Like if you only look at his baseball numbers, he definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not advocating for the guy as a person at all, but there's also people like Ty Cobb who they say was like a virulent racist, and he's known as one of the best to ever play. So you can't have certain standards for some people and not for others.
Yeah, what a mess. The Hall of Fame is a joke kind of now with the guy who won like 5 MVP awards isn't in the Hall of Fame, 7 Cy Young awards, Clemens isn't in the Hall of Fame, the all-time home run leader is not in the Hall of Fame, the all-time hits leader isn't in the Hall of Fame. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I think the thing that bothers me most is that some writers just go out of their way to not vote for a guy just so they're not unanimously elected. Like I mentioned it with Frank Robinson last episode. Like every single one of those guys on Frank Robinson's level should be unanimously put in the Hall of Fame. It makes no sense except for people are just morons who are deliberately being difficult.
I almost wish they would just have a year where they just let everybody in that should be in and can't get in because of allegations and whatnot. Just have like an oops all jerks weekend of Hall of Fame inductions.
I at this point it seems like they have to get in on some of those committees because they're not going to get voted in by the writers. Anyways, that's all I've got. Should we do our apologies?
Yeah, have fun in San Diego tomorrow. You gonna buy a
Thank
Manny
you.
Machado jersey?
No, I'm gonna wear my Orioles gear. I considered actually getting a Machado shirt from the Orioles and wearing that so people could be like, "Oh, you like him." He got booed big time in Arizona every time he came up to the plate last night.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it, but I guess if you're not an Orioles or Padres fan, I can kind of see why he's not super likable. It's just weird to boo him. I didn't think he was that disliked.
Yeah, I didn't think the Diamondbacks fans knew enough baseball to boo anybody, I guess.
Hey, they got more World Series since '83 than the Orioles do.
Yeah, that's true. That was a fun one too, the 01
They had a
season.
neat little museum in center field that was kind of cool. It had a bunch of trophies and artifacts and stuff. One gripe I have though is that there weren't labels for the things, so there'd be like a base, but you're like, I don't know what game is that from. Well, did they use it? There was a Randy Johnson jersey. Like, did he wear this jersey? When did he wear it? Was it in the playoffs? Was it in the World Series? It doesn't say.
They should have had a taxidermist stuff the bird that Randy Johnson hit with the pitch and put it on display.
You know, they did have Byung Young Kim mentioned in that museum, and you brought him up as playing for the Yankees, and that made me laugh because he was atrocious in that World Series, and he still got a ring. So
Yeah, they kept going to him too, and every time he came out, you're like, oh no.
yeah, it was all in his head at that point. Well, actually, speaking of the 2001 Diamondbacks, last night I was inspired by the celebration to bring up my apologies for this week, who is Steve Finley. Steve Finley was drafted by the O's in the 13th round in 1987 from Southern Illinois, Carbondale. So I don't know if that's the Southern Illinois Salukis that everyone's heard of from the basketball tournament or what. But he ended up only playing 2 years for the O's, 223 games, hit a total of 5 homers with 62 RBIs, 39 steals, and a 254 batting average. And that is because he was part of a transaction that is not necessarily good for the O's because he was traded with Pete Harnish and Kurt Schilling to the Astros for Glenn Davis. So Glenn Davis wasn't a slouch, but you know, when you trade away Kurt Schilling and Steve Finley, who went on to have a long, successful career, played in 2 All-Star games, won 5 Gold Gloves, it was not the Orioles' best move.
Yeah, and Glenn Davis fell off a cliff after that. I believe Steve Finley played for the entire National League West during his career.
Let's see. We have Arizona, we have the Padres, we have the Rockies, and the Giants and the Dodgers. I think that is all of them. I think you're right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. He played for a lot of teams. And besides those, he played for Houston for 4 years and the Angels for a season. All right. How about you?
Yeah, I got my apology is to Kevin Brown. He's no longer the most famous Kevin Brown. The former pitcher, he was also on that 97 Marlins World Championship team with Charles Johnson. He was the number 4 overall pick in the 1986 draft by the Texas Rangers. Spent his first 8 seasons with the Rangers. He won 21 games as an All-Star in 1992. Signed as a free agent on April 9th, 1995 with the Orioles. In his only season in Baltimore, he went 10-9 in 26 starts with a 3.60 ERA. That was the year after the strike. He would sign with the Marlins before the 96 season. He went to 2 more All-Star games with Florida. After the 97 World Series win, the Marlins stripped down the roster and he was traded to San Diego for 3 minor leaguers, one of them including former Oriole Derek Lee. After the season with the Padres, he was signed with the Dodgers. He spent 5 years with them, sporting a 2.83 ERA over 129 starts. On December 13th, 2003, LA would trade him to the Yankees for Jeff Weaver and two minor leaguers, one of them being former Cleveland Browns quarterback Brandon Whedon.
Okay.
But yeah, Kevin Brown was kind of a mercenary.
He was a good player. I think he kind of gets forgotten about when you talk about the best pitchers in the 90s because there was Maddox and Glavine and Johnson and Pedro and there were so many back then, but he won 2 ERA titles and was a 6-time All-Star. Like he was very good.
Yeah, he seemed intense too. He seemed like one of those guys you love having on your team, but you don't like.
Yeah, I don't know. He might be one of those guys. Who am I to say? But he was a good pitcher, that's for sure.
I had something else. We both predicted like 85 wins in the pilot episode of our show, and the Orioles are at 73 already. They're only 12 wins away.
Yeah, that's true. They are making us look silly. You know what?
Happily.
I Yeah, definitely happily. I think being an Orioles fan and fans of other teams I root for that are terrible, it just makes me every year think, I don't see him being that great. It's hard to be actually optimistic. Where I was reading before the season these Orioles fans being like, Vegas has it wrong. They're not giving the O's enough credit, and I was kind of thinking, I kind of think you're crazy, but the O's have been good.
Yeah, this has been a real treat to watch this year. Two of my other teams are the Commanders and the Hornets, and they both got new owners last month. The Michael Jordan sold the Hornets to
Uh
Gabe
huh.
Plotkin, who is going to be a character in an upcoming Seth Rogen movie about the GameStop uh, stock debacle. And
Oh,
the
really?
yeah, it looks good. And Daniel Snyder was pretty much forced to sell the Commanders to Josh Harris, who owns the 76ers and the Devils. Hopefully, the Orioles join them on my favorite team getting new owners list.
Right. I would love for that streak of your favorite teams to continue, but all we can do is cross our fingers. But don't hold your breath.
The Predators have a long-term sale coming where they're being slowly sold to the brother of the Cleveland Browns owner. I forget his first name, but his last name is Haslam.
Haslam? Yeah. Interesting. I did not know that.
But yeah, that's all I got this week. You got anything else?
I don't. Looking forward to seeing the O's in person this week, and hopefully I have some good news to share next week when we're talking and we get to discuss some wins.
Yeah, remember we got t-shirts on birdlandsports.com. Remember we don't make any money for them. Yeah, so go get yourself some t-shirts and thanks for listening.
Yep, I'll be wearing mine in San Diego. The
Holy
Astros
shit.
series.
Holy
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, that was an amazing catch.
Yeah, this is a mess. Okay. Holy shit. I can't breathe.